Hello everyone, my name is Alexzandria Sanchez and you are watching Get It Together. Today I have with me our very own president, Shirley Collado. This is her first year as president, and it is important to add that she is the first Dominican American college president in the nation. So thank you very much for speaking with me today.
Thank you, Alexandria. It's great to be here.
Today we will be discussing microaggressions, recruiting students of color, how to include all students, and also talking about the Chief Diversity Officer position here at Ithaca College. So in 2015, there were a series of protests where students of color were trying to address the way that they were being treated here on campus. And so it led to Tom Rochon stepping down, and it also led to staff members being required to attend at least 2 diversity sessions, while faculty were suggested to just do small things within their own schools in classrooms, but it wasn't mandatory. So now that you're here, how do you plan to address that? Because it is still, microaggressions are still an issue that students of color are dealing with, and it doesn't seem to be addressed in a structured way. So how do you plan on addressing that?
Sure. So, I was watching all of that from a distance as I was thinking about taking on the presidency here. And I was really moved by the intentionality and the intensity of the conversations on campus. And even though they were hard and they were challenging, I was really drawn to the potential of what could happen here. The dilemma that you mentioned between staff and faculty and how to make things mandatory for one group versus the other is a challenge overall in higher ed. And I think there's some staff, frankly, at the college who felt that even though they had put in time around some diversity and equity and inclusion training, that they were puzzled and troubled a bit by the same expectation not being in place for faculty. And so it's my hope that we use less of a stick and that we actually can integrate the expectations in general for all of our faculty and staff. And even though some of our staff were trained, I think we'd all agree there's a lot more that we can do. So in my first 5 months already, I have been a bit inspired by the Center for Faculty Excellence and certain departments that have taken on things. We have faculty, as you know, you had Professor Adams on your show, who are testing the power of intergroup dialogue in classes and going to faculty council and talking with our faculty and saying, get on board and let's get involved. I've also been really inspired by faculty members who are ready and want to do something and want to be more informed about dynamics in the classroom, but don't necessarily know how to get what they need. And it is my expectation moving forward that we will be able to generate an onboarding process for all of our new faculty and staff coming in that would include some of the training that's present. For people who are here, we need leadership at the chair level, at the dean level, at the school level, and across the college so that we start doing what we need to do. I will tell you as an example, for the provost search, the search committee, which actually includes a number of faculty, part of their process, and they're really committed to this, and students and staff are on that committee as well, are doing implicit bias training with our outside firm, with Kiefer. They have some great practices in preparing search committees to really think about how people get filtered out in the hiring process. That's an example. It's different than the microaggression work, but it's related in terms of campus climate. So I agree with our students and we'll be actively thinking about this with my team and with our faculty leaders, quite frankly, really wanting them to show up and say, we should be doing this too. This should not be just for staff.
So going back to the conversation that I had with Professor Derek Adams, and when he said kind of controversially that students of color should stop actively being recruited to Ithaca College because it seems to be that students of color here are here for the benefit of white students and not so much for what they get out of the experience. And so what will be different now that you're here?
So, I can't claim, I know the welcome for me has been really extraordinary and heartfelt and deeply appreciated. And I know as a first-generation college student, as a Latina, as a woman of color in my role, the first person of color to be in my role, there are a lot of things that through my lived experience I see in a particular way. But I'm a huge fan of figuring out how everybody could have a stake in the conversation and the work. And that means our white students are students of color and people who come from all walks of life here. The climate here should not be on the backs or at a cost to our students of color. I've had many, many conversations with many students. And I think that there's a lot of really good movement here. I understand what Professor Adams is saying, and I really cherish the kind of work that he's doing as a faculty member. And I can get why he's saying, if we're not prepared to have the climate that we need, then let's not keep inviting students into this community. I want to more ambitiously take a multifaceted approach. We can't stop creating access.
Right.
And we should actually be creating more access. But what I don't want is, like what's happened at a lot of higher ed institutions, is you kind of change who's able to be in the space, but you're not willing to change. We're not willing to change the place itself. And that's what we have to work on. And I think we have more and more white students going to college now, and their families and parents are anticipating and wanting and being prepared for a different experience. They too some want a different curriculum, a different set of practices. But I want our students of color to feel like they're full-fledged individuals in this place. This is their alma mater. This is not a place that they visit. Exactly. This is not a place that they just come to and doesn't change and expects them to do everything else. And we have work to do there. But I don't think we would serve ourselves well if we stopped providing agency and access to students of color. But we have a lot of work to do around our climate, and our climate survey showed that.
I know that it is easy to focus on students of color, because we are the minority, and also because you are Latina, so I know that you get a lot of questions about students of color.
I do.
But there is a majority of white students here, and so for the white students, how are you going to approach taking care of all of us, the students of color and the white students, because we do come from very different backgrounds? Yeah,
no, I so appreciate that question, Alexandria, because I think I was just actually talking to a group of students here in Park in a communications class that's focused on leadership. And one of the things I talked about was that as a leader, sometimes people put things on you and make assumptions about what's most important to you based on what people see you as or what you represent, the body that you're in, your gender, your race, your ethnicity, and many, many other things. I'm also fairly young to be in my role. And there are lots of factors why people would say, this is her agenda, this is what she's about. And I am everybody's president. Exactly. I am here to be about all of our students. And I'm not privileging one group or another, but I'm also here to set a tone, a level of expectation around what does it mean for everybody to have a stake in the conversation and do the work. And so I have been completely welcomed by students from all walks of life here. And that's been really powerful for me. And I'm listening carefully to all of them. And that doesn't mean that I stop paying attention to students who might be vulnerable at the periphery and not doing well. But in fact, that scope of students is actually pretty diverse too. We have students who are struggling with mental health issues. We have students who are falling through the cracks for a whole variety of reasons, and we need to pay attention to all of them. So I would say, I would hope that the student body, when they look at me, they're not assuming this is what she cares about only. But do I have a particular lens as someone who has been historically the only one or one of a few? Absolutely. Does it feel differently to be a Latina, one of the very few leading a private college nationally? Absolutely. That's very real. But at the same time, I am not just that. And so that's what I think is important. And I think, by the way, I think that really connects to other students, how they feel. There's students of color walking around here. They have a lot of interests. They have varied experiences, and they're not all the same. And our white students aren't all the same. And so if I could help model that in what we do around orientation, first year experience, what we're doing in our residence halls, how we're thinking about the next version of the ICC, our strategic plan moving forward will without a doubt have at its core a deep commitment to full participation, diversity, equity, and inclusion. But that's going to be the whole story. That's going to be embedded in everything, not just like this special part that's only for this group. And at least that's what I'm hoping to try to do here with the IC community.
Talking about diversity, you decided to postpone the Chief Diversity Director search.
Yes.
You did send out an email to everybody in the school about why you postponed it, saying that you wanted to strengthen your leadership team first. Could you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So you might recall, or maybe not, because it was a while ago when President Rashan was here. I believe it was about maybe even 2 years ago, before some of the things that were going on campus and before the campus climate survey was done. There had been several groups of people, faculty and staff, who had highly recommended a chief diversity officer role. And they in fact said that they wanted the role to hopefully report to the president, to be a senior position. And it's my understanding, I wasn't here, that there was kind of a lag in getting that position going. And unfortunately, and this is just my own bias here, like many institutions of higher ed, the position was introduced and brought in right on the heels of what was going on campus. And because there was a transition around a president, the portfolio, the position was, like many institutions in higher ed, kind of a little blurry and not really clear. And I have to tell you, when I was sitting in my office at Rutgers University, Newark, I mean, I've done this work nationally. I've advised organizations on this position. I've restructured my own teams around this kind of work. I did not think that the position was positioned and defined at the level that I wanted it to be, or that would serve this institution well. And so I postponed it. I put it on hold. And it wasn't so much that I just want to strengthen my team. I want a very ambitious, centrally placed role that reports directly to me, that is overseeing issues related to diversity and inclusion, but doesn't make them the only one doing it, and the only one doing it at the periphery with no real portfolio, with no real budget. And often a lot of these positions are, unfortunately. They might have fancy titles. They might even be reporting to the president. But they're usually, among the vice presidents, the least empowered person. And I think the other thing, just to be really direct, it's often in many institutions the only person of color on a leadership team. And for me, it's very important that my leadership team reflect the talent and the backgrounds of our students. And I'm working very hard to do that. So I want the CDO role. I'm not backing away from it. I think it's a really important role, but we need to get it right. And as we go into our strategic plan, I want someone who's going to be a transformative and empowered person in that role here, centrally placed. So that's what I'm hoping to do. And the time frame for that would hopefully, once we're kind of done with at least settling through this academic year, I have ambitions to pursue that search as early as the summer, so that we would be looking at the next academic year.
So we're almost at the end,
yes.
But do you think that this campus is really committed to taking the actions necessary to truly be the inclusive campus that we boast so much about?
I don't think we're fully prepared.
Okay.
I think that we are getting there, and I think that we would be naive if we thought that just a new president, even a president with my background, professionally and personally, is going to solve all of the issues that plagued this community the last few years. But I do believe that if we continue to build trust and construct more brave spaces where people can have real conversations, and we commit to a strategic plan that's going to actually put those goals at the center and not at the margins, we will be in really, good hands as a community. But this is messy. This is an institution that has grappled with a lot of issues. And you can see from our partners, Cornell and TC3, living in this region, all of us together, we're not in a bubble. The world is here. And we entered this school year with Charlottesville, Virginia, and, travel ban, and, DACA students not being, just so many things that are really complicating our ability to really be this place. But that's inclusive. That is where everybody could thrive. I think we have a long way to go, but I wouldn't have come here if I didn't believe that we were in a real good position to actually start doing something great.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me
Thank
today.
you.
I really, I'm looking forward to seeing your plans be implemented over the years that I'm here. So thank
I'll
you
need
very
some
much.
help. So
I'm here. I'm here.
thank you. And thank you for this opportunity. Your questions were so rich.
Thank you. And thank you guys for joining us. This is Get It Together, and I'm your host, Alexzandria Sanchez.